of people nowadays that want us, they want to ship speakers to us for restoration. And of course, speakers are large and heavy, and shipping is problematic nowadays. Shippers could destroy a cannonball. But I'm going to show you a couple of things about JBL. So I'm going to use these L112s that we're just finishing up a restoration on. There's a couple of things I want to point out for people that would like to ship these units to us, but they don't want to ship the entire speaker. So I want to point out a few things about JBL that will also apply to some other speakers. In the L112 and some of the other JBL models, there's 6 screws here on the back. And notice the cam lock connectors, we'll talk a little bit about those, but that's probably the worst connector JBL ever made or used. Anyway, those are the screws that you take out to remove the crossover. Here's a shot of the crossover network. And this whole unit is removed when you take those 6 screws out. The L pads are held in by 2 screws, but the screws are underneath this badge. And this badge has to be carefully removed to get to those screws. These badges are available nowadays as repos. They're kind of expensive, but they look really nice. So if you damage your badge when you remove it to get these L pads out, these badges are available as replacement items. But there are 2 screws under there that hold the little board that has the L pads on it. So if you want the L pads replaced, highly recommended. Remove the badge, remove the 2 screws, that drops out, and that is attached to the crossover network with these spade type connectors, so you don't have to even have a soldering iron to do this. Now, if you want to remove and send us just the crossover to be recapped, but you don't want to do the L pads, they can be disconnected with the wiring harness. There again, it's color coded and you don't need a soldering iron to do that. So you can send us just the crossover to be recapped. And if you do that, I highly recommend that you replace these cam lock connectors with binding posts. These are not really good connectors, and it's probably my least favorite connector that JBL ever used. Normally in these models, L112s, L110s are really nice, and a lot of the other ones. The tweeter and the mid-range is usually good, and I say usually, not always, but we can rebuild the mid-range. We can rebuild the tweeters if necessary. I recommend replacing the L pads, but if you can move the L pads through their full range and you don't hear that static-like breakup, then your L pads, you can probably stay with what you have. But if you move these L pads and you hear a static-like breakup coming through these devices, then these L pads have to be replaced. Now here's something that's really important, because you can see the woofer here, we've replaced the outer edge, all right? We've retained the original. You can see by this sticker, this is a JBL 128H. This sticker indicates that somebody in the past has reconed these drivers. And they used a JBL kit, and they did a pretty good job. So what we did was replace just the outer foam edge that had deteriorated. Now, if you want to take the woofers out, and you want to take the crossovers out and send them to us, then we can refurb those for you. But if you go that route, it's not any problem with removing the crossover. But the woofer is held in with machine screws that are into what we call T-nuts, or fang nuts, some people call them. And these insert up through the back of the cabinet. And you can see, if you get in under there and look, you can actually see where the T-nut is from the back side, what it looks like. So these are inserted through the hole, and these little fangs keep it from spinning. Now, this is JBL use both these. They come in different sizes. Here's the big one, has 4 fangs on it, and it's for a bigger screw. This is for like what they use in some of their pro cabinets. But this is more similar to what you'll find here, see? And the screw threads into it. The problem is they're not glued in place. When you're removing or replacing this screw, if you put a lot of downward pressure on the screw, you can force that T-nut out the back. Or take the screw out. It's when you're trying to take the woofer out, if you blow that T-nut and it's spinning, it's going to be really difficult. You'll have to pull this up the best you can, wedge it in place. You'll have to get a hacksaw blade in there and cut that screw in half. It will cause you a world of problems if you blow those T-nuts out. So you want to be real careful when you take it out that you don't put a lot of downward pressure on that screw and force that T-nut out. Now, if you successfully remove them, you're going to have to put them back in. So I would suggest you put the screw in a couple of turns and give it a little push, not much, but just make sure that that T-nut is not loose. Because if it is, you want to push that T-nut out. You want to put some epoxy around it. And be careful that you don't get the epoxy into the threads. But you want to get the epoxy around the base and around the shaft and put it back in there. And then when you put it back in there, you can use like a C-clamp and put the C-clamp on it, and then tighten the C-clamp down and drive that T-nut up into its proper place. When you do that, make sure that the screw will still thread. And then when that epoxy dries, you'll probably be able to put your screws back in without blowing that T-nut out. But if you're going to remove the woofers on a JBL to ship them to us, you have to be aware of this, because this can cause you major problems. Now, if you do pull the woofers out of something like this and ship them to us, the best way to ship your woofers is to put them together face to face, and then either use a bolt and a nut, or at the very least some nylon ties, and tie these together so that they can protect each other, and then wrap them in heavy bubble wrap. Crossovers in the same box with the woofers, or if you do, make sure it's compartmented to where you're not going to damage the crossover or the woofer in shipping. And if you do this, if you ship them to us, we're going to reuse your shipping material to send them back to you. So you want to make sure you have really good shipping material and they're properly packed. I have some other videos, and I'll probably do a new video on just concentrating on just packing these devices. If enough people ask me to make that video, I will. I'll make a video on how to remove and replace these badges if enough people ask me in the comments to provide them with that video. I'll show them how to do that. I can also show you how to remove or rebuild tweeters and mid-ranges. And if you turn around here and look behind you here, here's some L100s that we just refurbed. In the case of the L100s, we had to rebuild the woofer, complete recone, not the edge, but a complete recone, all the moving parts. And we had to rebuild these LE25 tweeters. There again, all the moving parts, including the final diffraction pad. And you can see here, we have removed these badges, and after we did and replaced the L pads, and after the work, we put the same badges back on. And just sitting here as a curiosity is just to show you the kind of quality of JBL drivers and what made JBL famous. Look at this D130. This is one of the starting drivers for JBL. Not the earliest thing they made. The D130 is different from the 130. But Alnico 5 magnet extremely heavy, strong aluminum frame, or a basket, if you want to call it that. One of the finest musical instrument speakers you can get. And there are variations of this that are also used in studio monitors or other home stereo speakers like L200s, for example. And you can see on this variant, the paper cone is a suspension is formed in the cone material itself, and there is also a 130 with a fabric edge that we can use for a hi-fi studio monitor performance. This would make an awesome speaker for guitar or pedal steel, for example. A couple of 4-inch voice coils out of JBL's. This one shows where JBL used a vented aluminum form. This one shows, I think this is out of an LE15, where the form material is vented, but it's made out of Nomex. JBL also used Kapton, and Kapton and Nomex are both high temperature plastics. Aluminum has its own characteristics and its own set of problems so it depends upon what you're going to use the speaker for, but they're both 4-inch diameter edge wound ribbon wire voice coils. So on the L112s, L100s, L110s, if you're going to ship them to us, always get in touch with us first. But the T-nuts are something that you have to pay major attention to. If you blow the T-nuts out on an L100, for example, that's going to cause you a lot of problem, because these baffles are made out of particle board and it's mortised into the face. So what's left of the particle board is very, very thin. You can see the L112, the L110 were one of the last of the L series, and the baffle is a much better, much thicker material, and the woofer is not mortised in to the frame. So you have the entire thickness to use that you don't have in the L100. You have to be really careful about your T-nuts in L100s. Anyway, that's just a look at what you're going to be dealing with if you have to, if you have a pair of vintage JBLs and you don't want to ship us the cabinets, but you want to send us the crossovers and the woofers to be rebuilt.